Did you know that you can get Social Security to give you SSDI for 7 straight years? If you have the right age and the right medical conditions, hold on, that didn't sound right. If you have the right age and the required medical conditions, you can meet the requirements to get 7 years of SSDI benefits or longer. Here's how it works. When you are allowed or approved for SSDI, you will receive what is called a medical diary. The medical diary is the number of years you have to wait before Social Security brings you up on medical review. It's called a continuing disability review, or CDR. The diary is based on how likely your condition or conditions will improve. One of those diaries is called the MIND diary. MIND stands for medical improvement not expected. It's a 7-year diary. The MIND diary is really for permanent medical conditions that will not improve. They can be chronic, they can be progressive, they can be static, they can be irreversible, they can be untreatable, or they're unable to correct with surgery. Those are the types of conditions we're talking about. Later on in the video, I'm going to get into the actual medical conditions that will get you on SSDI for 7 straight years. In order to qualify for this 7 years of SSDI, MIND diary thing, you have to meet one of 3 criteria. In other words, the Disability Determination Service, or the DDS, will give you a MIND or 7-year diary when you meet one of these 3 conditions. The first criteria is one of the shorter diaries, not the 7-year, but one of the 3-year or maybe a 1-year diary. One of those shorter diaries will end or expire or mature at age 54 and a half or older. In order for that to happen, you have to currently be 51 and a half or older right now. Here's an example. You're 52 years old now. At the end of a 3-year diary, you would be 55 years old. So if you're older than 54 and a half in this scenario, you would be, because you are 55. In this case, you would get the 7-year diary when making the SSI decision at age 52. As with anything with Social Security, there are exceptions. One of those situations is when you have a condition in which recovery or remission is almost certain. So the DDS will say, well, what we're going to do is we're making a decision now. Will they be 59 and a half or older when that expires? So it's actually looking at it as a 5-year diary. Yeah, I know. I said in another video that there's no such thing as a 5-year diary. It is true, but on CDRs, there are some exceptions where there could be a 5-year diary. So I wasn't lying to you. It's just not possible for a 5-year diary on an initial claim. Here's the second criteria. You will get the 7-year diary when a 3-year diary will mature under age 54 and a half. So right now you would be under age 51 and a half. But the key here is you would have to have a condition that either meets a listing, which is an automatic allowance, equals a listing, which is an automatic allowance, or you are able to get an allowance for some other reason, like you can't go back to your past work. So in this scenario, you would be younger than 51 and a half. So if you were 50 in 3 years, if they made the decision today and you're 50 now, you would only be 53 years old, which would not make that 54 and a half cutoff. Here's the third criteria. You have some other kind of permanent disability. In other words, you can be any age whatsoever as long as you have a qualifying medical condition that meets the MIND criteria. So some examples of this is when you have a condition where there's no therapy or surgery that can fix or correct what condition you have. It's really something that is more permanent in nature, where there's no way for the condition to be reversed. Earlier, I talked about that second criteria where you don't get to 54 and a half years old, but you may have a medical condition. What Social Security has is called a Mind Diary table. This table shows the list of medical conditions and the criteria you need to meet in order to get a Mind criteria when you are younger than 54 and a half when a 3-year diary matures. I put a link in the description to take you right to that table. Now on this list, there are a number of medical conditions. Some only require you to be a certain age to get the Mind criteria. For instance, if you have depression and the DDS says you are disabled for depression, all you have to do is be older than 46 years old to get the Mind criteria. There are others that only require you to have a diagnosis, such as cerebral palsy. So if you have a diagnosis of cerebral palsy and the DDS finds you disabled because of that, you would get the 7-year diary automatically. Still, some others require you to meet or equal a medical listing, such as rheumatoid arthritis. So if you meet the listing for that condition, you would get the 7-year diary. Then there are some that require you to have a history of this condition. In other words, it had to have started at a certain age in the past. And because of that, it had lasted for a certain number of years until you were able to get a diagnosis that Social Security finds you disabled with. Here's a good example. Let's take a stroke, a cerebrovascular accident. So with strokes, there are 3 criteria that the table shows. When you have a stroke, you only have to meet one of these 3 to get that 7-year diary. The first is you have to meet or equal a listing for a stroke. If you meet listing 1104, and that's in the listing of impairments, aka the Blue Book, if you meet that listing, you are an automatic allowance and you get 7 years of SSDI. The second criteria in this one is you have to be age 46 and a half. So if you are age 46 and a half and you have a stroke and the DDS says, yes, you meet the definition of disability, you would get 7 years of SSDI. The third criteria is you have to be age 26 and a half with an initial onset of a stroke 15 years before you even apply for SSDI. If you meet that criteria, you would get the 7 years of SSDI. Now you're probably wondering, well, what if I don't have the right age or the required medical conditions or something else to get that 7-year diary? Wait for it. I'm glad you asked. Well, you may be still approved for SSDI, but you may only get a 3-year diary, or in some cases where the condition is likely to improve, you may get a 1-year diary, sometimes an 18-month diary. I bet you're wondering what the difference is between this 1-year diary, the 3-year diary, and the 7-year diary. Well, I got a video that deals with that very thing. All you gotta do is click on the screen and it'll take you to the video where I break it all down. I'll see you on the other side in that next video.